in order to truly have a manifestation come through, you have to have three things in motion. You have to be unblocking, you have to be expanding, and then third, you have to be taking the action steps in real life. The manifestation trajectory at the fastest is when all three of those things are in motion. Welcome to the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacy Phillips. As a leading manifestation advisor with a process that's, radically different from the old New Age model, mine is rooted in psychology, neuroscience, and my energetic gifts. I created this podcast to help you expand your subconscious limiting beliefs about the potential of deserving the manifestations you're calling in. Therefore, you're tuning into this podcast series to show your subconscious that anything you desire is possible. And by pressing play, you've already started the process of manifesting it. Welcome back. So we are officially entering week 3 of the Magnetism Challenge, which has been such a joy, and just a huge congrats to everybody who has totally advocated for themselves and hopped on this. Last week, I shared in Instagram stories, I took a poll to see how many people were still going strong or needed to catch up. And it was a really big percentage that needed to catch up. And one thing I just wanted to say is, if you are going to hop on new, you haven't ever done this, or you're not a Pathway member, or if you are a Pathway member and you've been like, I should hop on, but I'm behind, all good. The most important thing is that you knock out week 1, regardless of your starting point. Knock out the week 1, and you can always hop to where we are now. Obviously, the biggest advantage, which you're going to learn about in this episode, is doing that full 3 weeks after of unblocking through the daily practice, which you can take into January, and it'll be fantastic. But I just really want to put that note out. It was really fun to share that on Instagram stories and really share all the things you all have already been manifesting while doing it, as well as your breakthroughs and the big shifts you've seen. They've been paramount. Some people have manifested a salary, a job, an apartment. People have broken up with partners that needed to. A lot of people are seeing huge blocks for the first time after doing this work for so long and not being able to catch them. So again, I'm just going to give my spiel. This Magnetism Challenge is just imperative to do the groundwork to connect with your manifestation in 2021, because you're going through the entire manifestation process of calling in, clearing space, finding your authentic code, learning about the new daily practice, and then doing it. And so in doing it, you begin doing the unblocking, the expanding, and having the tools ready to pass the test. And those are the 3 things that have to be in motion to do it. So in this week, week 3, we're keeping note of our triggers each day, from small to large. All of them are being mirrored to us for an exact reason, to show us where we're blocked in conjunction to the manifestations we're calling in. And we're then choosing our DIs based on how much time we have each day. So this is the solution to the person that's like, I only have 10 minutes. I only have 15 minutes. Maybe I have an hour and I want to go above and beyond. You really get to use the filtration process for that. Again, if you haven't joined, it's not too late. And if you're totally new, you're not in the pathway, we do have a gift for you. We've extended the sale through December 31st. So you'll use the code, all caps, magnetic20, MAGNETIC 20, to sign up for the pathway at the rate of $20 a month, rather than $27 a month, which will then be 12 payments equaling to $240 a year. Again, I always tell people that this is cheaper than what we used to sell just the workshop, How to Manifest, for. But of course, inside the pathway, you get access to all 11 of our workshops, our monthly class, which you'll hear one of them today. It's called Supported, as well as access to the really exclusive community group. So yeah, hop on. Follow stories, because I'm in there a lot leading us through this challenge, at To Be Magnetic on Instagram. Or go into the community group where everybody's touching base and supporting each other. And I think today's episode couldn't be more supportive. So today, because you're doing such deep work of reprogramming and unblocking and reinforcing, we wanted to give you that extra support, especially before the holidays. You're going to take time off. You may be coming up against holiday triggers. So we are re-airing one of our most popular supported episodes, all about reprogramming and navigating blocks. Also, just to help you have deeper awareness on this challenge of how to recognize blocks. For those of you that don't know, Supported is our once-a-month class where Jessica, my co-host, and I will go through and answer the most frequently asked questions, or we often will have coaches come in to give their deeper insight of what's coming up in sessions and answering questions as well. It's only available in the Pathway, and this one is particularly deep and gives great examples of how to really take this work further, clearing up any roadblocks you might have had towards reprogramming, deep imaginings in general, and the success that you can have from it. So I hope you get a lot of support from this. And I'm wishing everybody a really, really beautiful holiday. I know it's a really odd year. I hope you can use these tools for anything that's coming up around that. But just most importantly, I hope that you can find a little bit of the magic and the joy that's hopefully a silver lining with whatever your personal experience has been this year. Happy holidays.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to be covering all things reprogramming. Welcome.
I just want to say for anybody in here that might not be privy, we have a couple of new things. One thing that's really exciting is we do have the question service for the coaches. So we saw in the Pathway community group, somebody who is really hung up, has been doing this work religiously for a year and doesn't feel like they're having any momentum. I can get to that in a moment, but don't let things like that just bottle up. Obviously, you have the Pathway community group to reach out to for free. That's part of your service. But also, it is so valuable, this question service. It's $25, and you write in a very detailed forum what your question is. And then you get a coach who sends you back a voice note, not only totally reading the energetics of what's going on for you, but also giving you the homework you need inside of the Pathway and any action steps you need to take in life. So make sure to really take up on that if you are hitting these blocks. Don't just stop the work or get stuck. That's what that service is there for, and that's why we make it so affordable. So I just want to mention that in here. And then I do want to make the one little caveat. If somebody is experiencing that, because I saw one other person comment on that post that they too have been doing the work for so long and they're not seeing any manifestations and they're feeling really disheartened. I would say this on the speaking tour all the time. It's so, so important. When I used to actually take clients, when I would see this pop up, it's when I would have clients that are the introvert overachievers. So they're really good at homework. They do the reprogramming, they learn all the methods, they retake the workshops all the time. But in order to truly have a manifestation come through, you have to have three things in motion simultaneously. It's a trifecta. You have to be unblocking, you have to be expanding, and whether it's fragment or whole expanders, they have to truly expand you. You have to have that subconscious moment that goes, aha, oh my gosh, yes, if they could do it, I'm absolutely on my way and I can do it too. And if you're having trouble identifying if you're having that aha moment, that's why we do inside of the daily reprogramming exercise have that one DI called expander. So you can actually dig into your subconscious to see if you truly have any, or it helps you search for new ones. And then third, that has to be emotion is you have to be taking the action steps in real life. And that's probably the missing piece that these two people in particular probably weren't doing. And that's why they're not seeing results. You have to be jumping off the cliffs. You have to be passing tests. You have to be following your authentic code of delegating and detoxing what's not serving you. The actionable is what creates the momentum, the situational magnetism to start to, magnify or pull what you want to you. The expander portion, finding the expanders, are creating the space in your subconscious to come through. Otherwise, if you're just unblocking and taking action steps, you're creating what I call a magnetic savings account. You have all of this magnetism just pent up waiting, but there's nowhere for it to go because you don't have space. And then, of course, the unblocking piece is so important in tandem with all three, or as a trifecta, the things you're projecting in your subconscious that are saying, stop, stay back, I don't deserve that. I don't want it. It's not safe. When you're actually breaking those down, rewriting and creating a new neural loop that's projecting, I totally deserve this, I should have this, that's what's going to actually allow it to come to you as well. So if you happen to be one of those people, you're experiencing that, you really need a survey if you have all three things in motion at once.
So true. I personally always forget to really pull in the expander piece because I'll like think consciously. I'm like, oh, yeah, I have an expander. I know someone who does that and who does that. But then when I like boil it down, I'm like, well, who's the person that's like exactly like me? Like, who's the person that I really see myself integrated with? And that's why I love that Expanders DI, because you literally can sit there with your expanders and feel how you're so similar in so many ways. So whenever I'm like, oh, why is this not coming through? I feel I'm taking action, I'm unblocked. Sometimes it could be that expanders piece.
I think it's one of the easiest to get the laziest on when you become more advanced and you've manifested, because you're like, oh, they're coming, expanders are coming, and it clicks, no problem. I get lazy on that too. And then I'll notice, if I have the other two things in motion and something isn't manifesting, I'm like, I need to do a little expander work. So I get that.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump in. First one, workaholic block. I want to start my own business, but I just uncovered a block around feeling like I have to give up my life and abandon myself and my happiness to be successful. Lacy mentioned on a recent episode of Expanded that she spent 16 hours a day when she first started TBM. I'm wondering if this felt empowering in the process to make it easier to work long hours because she was staying true to herself. I also fear that being successful will mean workaholic. Any advice on how to reprogram this?
This is a great question. So number one, this is just a block that you picked up somewhere, in childhood, whether whomever you saw being successful may have been on TV, may have been in real life, or a friend of a family friend. They probably were workaholics, and that's why they were successful. I'm even thinking back to the ones I grew up around. They were all, because my uncle's Iranian, they were all of his doctor friends were the only ones that I really saw as successful around. And they, of course, because they didn't specialize, or if they were surgeons, they were working around the clock, never around their family. So I would really look at where you pick that up from. Secondly, I want to say for me personally, having been that was because I didn't have any resources. I didn't have any communication skills. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't have expansion of what help looked like. And I was living in a lot of lack. So I didn't think I could hire people. So in fact, I think like now, knowing what I know, and let's just say I hadn't made any success or money off of my career, I definitely would, if I were to start a new thing, I know how to delegate a lot quicker and easier because my health depends on it, period. So I really want to demystify and take that out, that you have to be a workaholic in order to be successful. Jen is always a great example of somebody who is absolutely not a workaholic. She's 100% living her human design. She only works with one woman who works for her and handles, a lot of things for her. Jane is her name. And she's successful and she's making a living and she's doing what she loves. And she is not at all a workaholic. She seems to follow any ping she has in terms of the next business move or marketing. So I guess the best energetic way to answer this is to unblock where you pick that up from. And then number two, really, really get clear on your true authenticity of what that is going to be for you or what that looks like for you. And I love to encourage people to look back in their patterning in the past when you've been successful in anything. It could be because energetics are all connected. They're all the same. So if you look back and say dating or friendships, have you had to be what I'll say, a dog paddler, like constantly dog paddling and hustling in order to make those work? What's your true flow look like? Because it's going to be the same in work if you're unblocking all of the stigma you've picked up through society. There's so much programming of what success has to look like for people. And I think especially COVID, has really entered us into a whole new paradigm of what a business can look like, what success can look like. So it's really, really demystified that programming that's been sort of set as the end all be all. So that's sort of my advice for that.
Yeah, I think this is a really popular, fear or block for a lot of people because they think, oh, to be at the top of my game, I have to be working 24/7. And like, I know at least for Daniel, for my boyfriend in music, he wants to have his own record label and be like a top executive, but also be a creative. And he really needs freedom and space to kind of move around and do a bunch of things. And all of his sort of mentor expanders are super workaholics. And so he has to get really kind of creative and look at people who are running their businesses in other fields. So maybe not in music. So he's looking at tech entrepreneurs or people like Tim Ferriss or speakers or authors and see like what their lifestyle is like and how they're able to be successful. So he can start modeling that instead of looking at all of the people specifically in his industry that are doing the thing that he's not trying to call in.
I love that. And, that's a version of out expanding the programming you've taken in of what something has to look like.
Okay, reprogramming all of high school. I understand.
I get it, man.
I understand how to reprogram one specific memory, but how do you reprogram a whole situation? For example, all of high school was rough. How do you reprogram that whole phase? Also in reprogramming, do you change it up so a particular event didn't happen at all? Like if you needed to end a relationship at a certain point, so do you reprogram that you just ended it and walked away? How should I navigate?
For me, if I were tackling this, if it feels like a whole time period, right? I would actually be tackling this from looking at the root of what in me was attracting all of that. For instance, even in real time now, when I see a ton of patterns showing up that are similar energetically, I don't really tackle each of them because they all will have a commonality of why I'm attracting them. And I think we've said a lot of disclaimers as to you're not attracting on purpose, really, really painful experiences. But there is something, whether it's titled low self-worth or whatever we imprinted when we were young, that is attracting that high school energetic experience. I don't think you have to feel overwhelmed to go through every memory. In fact, I think the brain is so intelligent and so powerful that when you look at all of the commonalities and even just using those specific journal prompts that we have, looking at it as a whole and answering those questions from that whole experience, you'll probably start to come down to a root of what is it that's kind of attracting a lot of that energy. And I would be taking that through first the inner child and shadow DI. That's really helpful to start to get to the root of whoa, that's why all of that was happening. And once you're down there, the beauty of the brain is it's going to start to pop up all of these memories from high school that all had very, very similar things in common. So you start to kind of work on all of them at the same time. And I think it's less about that specific relationship example, right? Like walking away or it didn't happen. It's much more about whatever you have to do in order to be in your worth in high school. So any memory that's coming up, what is the opposite? The opposite's usually the medicine. So how to be in your worth. And I would kind of work on this for a while until you feel like when you think of that time, it's no longer triggering. Like when you go through, Jessica, a bigger experience, do you revisit?
So I'll say two things on this. One, all of high school, you might have had a dynamic that was going on, a low self-worth, whatever it may be. Maybe you were dealing with a really stressful situation at home and it was coming out, in your peer groups or whatever was happening, or you just had really challenging peers in high school. Yeah, so I would go through the later parts of inner child where you're a teenager in high school and really envision that whole period of time you being your most authentic self.
And in your power, in your worth.
Totally. And so because you're that authentic person, maybe you're visualizing a totally different high school, people interacting with you differently, your home life being differently, maybe having magnetic high school friends who were supportive. Maybe you had, magnetic teachers or mentors or peers at that time that were showing you, how to be even more authentic. So I would reprogram that. But then when I've gone through childhood memories, For example, like I have one where my kindergarten crush, which is so silly, kindergarten, it was
real.
like making fun of me and called me fat. And so instead I'll go in and I'll have him say that. And then I'll be like, wow, that hurt. That didn't feel good. And then I'll go to my magnetic mom and be like, what do I do about this? And we have a discussion about bodies and how all bodies are beautiful and fat isn't a bad word. It's a beautiful word, you know, like all of these things. And so you have this other conversation. So that's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah, I really like that. And so, like you're saying, it's kind of in a similar vein rather than focusing on all of the individual memories. Like the way you would tackle it is going through that latter part in Unblocked Inner Child and then really recreating your magnetic experience to be in your worth, in your power, in your authenticity. And what I do want to say on what you said, I think is so powerful for people who are reprogramming and focusing. I think the three things, you know, in attachment styles, the three things in order to be secure that one had to experience often was being seen, soothed, and safe. So, you know, if you're somebody who's experiencing like a very big time of your life, you know, not being secure and not being confident in your worth, it'd be interesting to look at when you're doing the reprogramming that you're receiving all three of those things, even just Googling attachment styles further, or certainly Amanda, our coach, really focuses on those. It would be interesting to work with her or just looking up the definition of those and taking those through those experiences.
Those are so key, especially through the childhood years. I mean, everything really boils down to like, oh, this happened because I wasn't getting this need met, whether it's one of those three. So that's so helpful. Okay, trust and jealousy. How do you go about reprogramming feeling of jealousy and trust issues? I've been with my partner for 9 years now and still have these feelings arise. He's never cheated before and is one of the most genuine and trustworthy men I've ever met. So I find it weird that these feelings are still in our relationship to this day. How can I reprogram?
That sounds like a me problem. So it's really, really detecting where you picked up lack of safety, like abandonment, essentially is what that comes down to. And so really looking in those early childhood years when you're reprogramming or doing the daily practice. But when you're going through those, I would really start to look at, you know, starting again with, you know, Jessica just suggested Unblocked Inner Child, looking at where you picked up abandonment, because that's really what you're fighting with. It's if he's not giving you any reason to suspect, it's a you thing. You know, I've experienced that before. In my prior relationship, actually, if I were to put Max and my prior relationship together, I actually had a lot of those feelings in that relationship because subconsciously he was looking at, I mean, even though he was like loyal and totally there and stuff, there would be things that I, you know, like one time he met this art dealer who he like kind of pretended to be single around to help his career because she was interested in him. So there were little things like that where I was like, you actually give me reason and pause to feel insecure. However, with Max, never. There's never a day that I sit here and I'm like, I wonder if he's seeing someone or interested. Never. It's the most secure relationship. So if you are with somebody who is like a Max and you're feeling that way, I would really look into the abandonment stuff and look at reprogramming that. And also, again, investigating attachment styles. You know, that's an anxious attachment. So really kind of looking at that and how to heal that to move more into secure.
Yeah, and I've definitely moved through this. And I think getting to the root of where you didn't get that safety and security as a child is so helpful. Because a lot of times, at least for me, when I went back to my root, it was like, oh, okay, I felt like if I couldn't control the situation, then it would end in a lot of pain. And so it's like your brain is protecting you from feeling a lot of pain. In my situation, there was an affair in my family. And so it was so painful, and protecting myself from, I don't ever want to have an affair or cheating in my relationships. So I need to be, you know, hyper vigilant and on the lookout to make sure that doesn't happen. So it takes work going back into soothe your inner child. But then what really helped me like completely move on the other side of it and shift into fully secure was reprogramming every time I felt triggered around trust or jealousy. So essentially, there would be, let's say, something innocent that would happen that isn't a question of trust, but in my mind, I had categorized it as, ooh, red flag, and it wasn't a red flag. I was actually safe. And so going back in and giving yourself, hey, this is a safe and healthy interaction, and doing that with all of your little things that are coming up, and just seeing that like, okay, now I can feel safe in this situation. That was really helpful for me.
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan of action. It really has been so long since I've had direct experience with that. So I think like, yes, if I were tackling that today, I think that's such a great, great blueprint.
And it really works because I'm telling you, I was like, I'm never going to get rid of trust issues. They're always going to be there, lying dormant, blah, blah, blah. 100% confidence you can get rid of them. It is so, so, so possible.
Awesome.
Reprogramming, enjoying exercise. A lot of the work is about reprogramming something that is already there. But do you think it's possible to reprogram something that isn't? I hate exercising and working out. I can't think of anything I'd rather not do. But I have always longed to be an active person who enjoys keeping fit. I know my magnetic self is active. Can I reprogram to enjoy working out?
I mean, didn't Dr. Tara talk about this recently? Not recently. I think it was actually closer to our earlier explained. Do you remember what she had to say about that?
I think it's about the reward she talked about.
That makes sense. Yep. And like off the top of my head, since I've had health issues, I haven't loved it either. For me, it's been all about finding the workouts that actually light me up, and I'm a projector. So that's a huge component. But yeah, the reward sounds like that would make sense. I've never really worked on, I don't know if you have, Jessica, like adding something to my life.
I feel like a little bit, like I've gone through body image stuff, and I feel like this kind of ties in a little bit, where it's like understanding what the root is of why you don't like working out. Do you not like it because you've always associated with high intensity? You're so exhausted afterwards. Not
good at it.
Yeah. So like Lacy's saying, like find something that works for your body that feels good and reprogram it to be something that you're doing. I think Dr. Tara said something to this, like reprogram it as something that you're doing for your mental health, not to look a certain way.
That would be more of an incentive for sure.
And then think about like all the perks that you're going to feel afterwards. Like I'm so excited to feel, a rush of endorphins and productive, and that I accomplished something today. Like start thinking about all the things you're excited to feel after you're done exercising, and make it your own. Exercising can be going for a walk. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be this really intense thing. So just start bit by bit.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is really getting specific about what you want it to do for you, like why you desire to become more active. And then based on what you want it to do for you, more of a physical appearance thing? Is it a feeling better thing, having more energy thing? And then from there, really finding the thing that will work for you to achieve that, and having some sort of cognizance of a reward system for it.
Yeah. And I don't know why this word just keeps coming to me, but reprogram exercise as punishment, because it shouldn't be punishment. It should be enjoying. It should be joyful. It should be a reward for yourself because you're treating yourself well. So you might have a block that exercise is punishment. And so reprogram it to mean something different to you.
I think that's great.
Okay. Trouble allowing healing. I'm struggling to get the DIs to work for me and be a positive experience instead of negative. When I begin going back to my earliest memory, I get really sad and I stay in this sadness. Telling myself a new story and reprogramming doesn't seem to work because I keep believing the old story, that I'm stuck in what actually happens. How can I break through this?
Yeah, I've definitely experienced this as well, and I think if you're somebody who has struggled with abuse or really traumatic scenarios, this can be heavier. So I always like to preface working through this with a professional who can really help you with the tools, whether that's EMDR, especially for trauma, PTSD, or if it's a support group, not just doing this totally alone if you're getting stuck in that cloud and that heaviness. However, for me, in the past, when I've experienced this with a couple of things, it's not too often, it usually will mean that I didn't hit the thing that would be the most soothing. Like kind of getting back to that secure analogy, those three things that was the safest, most soothing and seen. So maybe you haven't quite hit on the exact rewrite that you're needing in that experience to feel a true release and to feel a true healing around it. What are your thoughts, Jessica?
Yeah, so actually a friend of mine reached out and said they had something similar. And what was coming up for her was like this feeling of grief that like that didn't happen in her real life. And she's kind of sad and was grieving the fact that she missed out on, you know, what this magnetic option of her life could have been. So I think feeling into any grief, doing an emotional clearing DI can be really helpful for that. But then going in and realizing that, yes, you can definitely use magnetic parents, but if that's causing you to feel more grief that like, oh, I didn't actually have these parents, I'm so sad, be your own magnetic parent. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Be your own healer in that reprogramming, because then everything is within you. Like you have the ability to be that person and heal yourself and give yourself the soothing and security and safety that you needed. So that would be my recommendation there.
And that's a really good point, because usually when we're trying these newer magnetic experiences or people, we kind of have to build into them sometimes, depending on how much trauma we experience. So for instance, like when I first did Inner Child and I was trying to just like picture my ideal magnetic parents, my brain just couldn't even go there. So, you know, like the traditional way of doing inner child work is using yourself, your older, bigger self, helping your younger self. So it's a fantastic building block until you kind of start to get to those neural pathways that feel more healed. Then it's sort of like now you're getting ready for a more magnetic experience the next time around. So I think that's a really good way to create an opening for that.
Totally. Yeah, because in that way of doing it, you aren't missing out on that older self that's comforting you because you already are. It's already within you.
Agreed. So I'm quickly interrupting this episode to invite you, if you're ready to start your manifestation journey, or if anything you've heard in our manifestation episodes has piqued your interest to begin. We have a la carte workshops in everything from the basics bundle, which is what we recommend to everyone who starts. It's the formula that actually teaches you how to manifest, unblocked inner child, and unblocked shadow. We also have a la carte workshops on love and money. But the real gem is the Pathway membership because it encompasses every single workshop we have. It's a year-long membership with full access to the few a la carte offerings we have and exclusive workshops not available anywhere else, such as the daily practice, which is what everybody in the Pathway uses, hopefully at least 3 times a week to daily, in order to truly create the new neural pathways that one needs in order to manifest, and houses the library of our deep imaginings, which is our unique hypnosis process that allows you to get into your subconscious and overwrite those old neural pathways, creating the new ones. You can use our special code EXPANDED, all caps, EXPANDED, to receive $20 off your first a la carte workshop purchase or $20 off your first month of the Pathway. Again, that's all caps, EXPANDED, EXPANDED. Okay, now back to the episode.
Done unblocking. Since the beginning of this work, I've manifested everything I wanted in my 5 to 10 year plan in less than 2 years.
Wow. Please submit your process story and
Seriously?
your testimonial, because this is going to be so expansive for other people.
Please send in. I'm finding now that I have no more dreams or goals I want to pursue. Even though there are certainly ways I could level up my life, none of them fill me up with the same desire as my previous manifestations. Is this something like a new limiting belief I need to work through, a magic dark, or do I just need to chill and enjoy what I have?
This is where I've been for probably like 2 years now. I understand it can feel very complacent, especially as somebody who was like working so hard and a go-getter and everything to kind of have all of this stuff lock into place. It becomes addictive. It's like a video game, and when you really harness the energy and everything's just happening and not even just on the material plane, but you're attracting the right friends and just these things that really fill you up. And then you kind of have everything that you want and you set out to get. It can kind of feel like a retirement, like a purposeless experience. I think we've done a post in the past, like what happens when I manifest too quickly is an issue, because that sometimes things are coming at us so fast that we have to upgrade our nervous system really quick to even feel deserving of them. So that's a separate issue. And what happens when you've manifested everything you wanted? And so I'm still navigating this. And for me, whenever I get into that place of like feeling complacent or purposeless, I always go back to my authentic code. And I did that earlier, actually, I think about a month and a half ago. I was like, what is my authentic code now? I haven't revisited to see if it's new. I revisit it often to see if I'm filtering things correctly in my life based on it. But we change, as we upgrade. And so it was different. And so when I got to see that, I was like, oh, my life is already shifting into this difference, which is way more focused on family and lifestyle and connection. It's way less material or manifesting greater things. So I think like the first piece of advice I would give is revisit your authentic code and see what's going on there. The second thing I did was I revisited the rut to see like, am I truly in a rut? You see this happen a lot with people who sell their companies or they retire early or become successful too quickly. And I think, revisiting rut is really helpful to really just see, am I in something like that? Because I think the biggest key factor is realigning your purpose, and asking like, what is my purpose? Am I still on my purpose? And your purpose doesn't have to mean career and things like that. It can be anything. Recently, I've been feeling a lot of pings like my purpose might be to help animals. Like, it's just crazy. I'm still exploring all of that. But I think revisiting your authentic code, really checking in with the rut inside of Up Level, and then also really asking yourself that purpose question. And it doesn't have to be definite. It doesn't have to be answered right away. But I think it'll start to lead to the breadcrumbs of where you're going next and what you're moving into next. And I'm going through a massive transition in my life right now that's going to require me to be somebody on the other side of it that I have no idea who that'll be or what that looks like. So I'm surrendering to that process of unknown and not trying to get a leg up on it, and just rolling with it. So it's hard to be in this space, and I think people listening who aren't there at all are like, fuck you guys. Like, whoa. But I just want to be an expander as somebody who has experienced that kind of for the last 2 years. Those are the tools that have been really beneficial for me. And it's a moving ball.
I love that authentic code piece. I just went back through my authentic code as well. And most of the things on my manifestation list, crafting a new list, are elements of realignment to pieces of my authentic code. So you can manifest those other new pieces to further align with parts of your authentic code, because we're always growing and shifting. And so it doesn't have to be, maybe now it's not even any tangible items you're going to put on your list to manifest. And maybe it's just a way of being or living, or how you present yourself, or, what your day-to-day looks like, or how you feel.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I even had a moment, I think it was about 4 weeks ago, and I looked at Max and I was like, do you think I'm, a loser or something? And he was like, what?
Yeah.
He's like, you have this like super successful company you started from your passion. You have X, Y, and Z going on. And it was so funny because I got to see how much I validate myself through those exterior validations. And that's where I was like, oh, this is a realignment of a purpose thing and an authentic code thing and a rut thing. So I think, yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you shared that. That was, yeah, everybody is like, what? Lacy? No way. But I love that, because you're showing such a human element in that, which is like everyone is on their own journey. Whatever is perceived on the outside, it's all about what's going on within us internally.
Totally. And no matter what you manifest on the material plane, it will never be the thing. Like, as somebody who has manifested everything on the material plane I've ever wanted, it's never going to be the thing that fills up the internal plane.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next question. Magnetic mother. What does it mean that I get a sharp pain in my throat when I do the trust DI? Is the throat chakra your trust chakra? I also find the magnetic parent sometimes wavers into a parent that I've been trying to be for my 2 boys. The living, nurturing mother that my mother, who had postpartum depression, wasn't. Can I be my own magnetic parent? I get so many images when I think of a magnetic mother, but my magnetic father always reverts to who I have always had, or at least how he nurtured me in ways my mother was incapable of. I do feel anger towards her. Thank you.
I'll let you take this since, you were just literally, going over this.
It's so funny. So listen to Explain Reprogramming, because I brought this up there. But Dr. Tara talks about how different pains on certain parts of the body have to do with like receiving and giving and, mother side and father side. And I was actually having this similar thing where the back of my throat would just kind of tense up muscle wise. I'm not quite sure about the trust linking to it. I can definitely see that being a possibility. But obviously I associate it with the throat chakra. And for me, it was also tied into a mother sort of situation where I needed to speak my needs and really get clear on what my needs are in the situation and feel seen and taken care of. So for the first part of your question, yes, you can be the magnetic mother to yourself if that works for you. But the pain seems like something related to something that you're holding on to in relation to your relationship with your mother. So whether that's you need to set a boundary, which is kind of what I needed to do in my case, whether it's a verbal or energetic boundary, or maybe it's kind of just acknowledging that maybe you didn't get the love or nurturing that you were wanting from your mom. And that's okay. And now you can give it to yourself and you can give it to your kids. And then just move through that physical sort of tension in there, because it's definitely seems to be related to the mother side of things.
Yeah, I've always heard that from healers too. And I think the real beauty of approaching it like that as well is you're going to start to heal and lose any of the activation you have around your own mom. So not only are you doing exactly what your intention is to show up as a better mom, but you'll be healing that mother wound deeper, which, for anybody who doesn't know, whenever we're attracting girl drama or envy from women and X, Y, and Z, jealousy, all of that stuff, it's usually a mother wound. So the more of those we can heal, the more harmonious female dynamics we'll have in our life.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
That mother wound, man.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we know, for anybody who identifies as a woman, the father wound usually shows up in relationships and dating.
I think it's just so powerful, like going back to what you were saying of getting those 3 things, feeling seen, feeling safe, and feeling soothed. Did you get that from both of your parents? And, if you didn't, how can you give that to yourself now? And how can you both kind of grieve the fact that you didn't get that and then also give that to yourself in life now and not depend on needing it from them? Because I think sometimes, even as adults, you look to your parents still looking for that validation, that's being seen, being soothed, being safe. And now you have the autonomy and freedom to give that to yourself and not need it from them. And then you can just start accepting them for exactly who they are.
100%. Yep.
Okay, trouble getting a healing. My mind keeps drawing a blank every time I go into the DI to find a healing. I'm highly aware of all my subconscious blocks, but I can't quite figure out who or what it is that I need to heal, integrate, or feel in the moment. Sometimes I don't even see a memory, but I feel the trigger. What should my mind be looking for or grabbing towards to create this healing if it's never been there before?
Yeah, this is a great one. So usually I actually used to experience this with Vedic meditation. I fell into this sort of rut where it's like I couldn't go deeper. And so it was a control thing, a block thing, a subconscious, like trying to protect me thing, which is what's happening to you in this situation. So my advice is actually very, very gentle, is I would do them enough So I don't know how many rounds of DIs that's going to be for you, but I would do them enough. And when I reach that point where it's like, I'm not jogging anything memory wise, or I can't come up with the thing I need, I would actually like totally just relax everything in me with absolutely no expectation. And what you're doing in that moment is you're really showing your subconscious, like, it's okay. You're basically letting go of the control. You're feeling safer. So I would do it enough times without having any type of expectation or needing to arrive at something or do something until your subconscious and your nervous system feels safe enough to just allow that to pop back up. And I wouldn't do this being like, I'm going to do it 10 times to feel safe enough. You just kind of have to work through it. And so like in Vedic meditation for me, when I would hit that spot, I would let everything relax in my body and go with zero expectation to go deeper. And I would be like, you're in control. It's okay. Like, so you're doing a similar thing to open up deeper. It's just your subconscious and nervous system trying to protect you.
Love that. And I think you talked about it in the podcast too, but just making in Reprogramming Explained podcast. And I think, you're saying this is really an intuitive process. Like, listen to your body, listen to what it's needing. There's no one set answer. Everyone's situation is so nuanced. And so if you're needing time or you're just feeling the trigger in there and just seeing what happens, explore that and trust that that is the right thing for you.
Agreed. And it will pass.
Mm-hmm. Reprogramming new memories. Is there any magnetic value in reprogramming adult or recent memories, or is that a waste of time? I keep thinking about situations where I wasn't in my worth, job, relationship, etc., and keep wondering if reprogramming that will help.
Yeah, it's a beautiful starting point, because usually when you're down there, you'll start there and then it'll ask you, now think of an earlier time, and you'll be like, oh, holy shit, this has happened to me before, like at a midway point, and then there'll be an earlier time at a childhood point. So most often than not, any trigger we're experiencing in our adult life in this hologram matrix is because it's something that we've experienced in the past that's being given to us as a mirror to revisit, to heal, in order to move to the next level and no longer, have that experience in that form anymore. So yeah, absolutely. I would start with what's coming up today, even if you're just using the trigger, deep imagining, and the general journal prompts. And then in that, it's going to ask you for an earlier time and an earlier time. And again, with that, be intuitive. Don't force expectations on yourself. And you'll usually see that you've actually experienced it and had that imprintation much earlier.
Yeah, I almost always start with what I'm getting activated with, like in real time. And then the journal prompts help me get to the root of, oh, okay, that's where I went earlier. Or if I'm not doing a journal prompt on that, again, in the, trigger DI, it says, has this happened earlier? And that's where you really get to the root. Because I think it's a lot easier to access the root of it when you're in that subconscious space. Use what's coming up now as like your navigation, like your roadmap essentially, and then go in knowing that you're going to get to another memory that happened earlier on that is very similar or in line with what is happening now.
Absolutely.
All right. Energetic of zingers. What are the energetics around zingers? I'm facing a series of passive-aggressive comments coming from others that are cloaked as a compliment, but usually have the underlying tone of judgment and only create a separation. What are your suggestions for identifying and working through this? One example is being called perfect after sharing good news, but it has the tone of jealousy rather than sincerity. What can I reprogram?
I just read recently, Instagram's all quotes now, and I can't remember who posted it, but it was like, take inventory of how people react when you share good news. And that'll start to allow you to see what community is serving you and isn't. But that's a you thing again, and so there's something subconsciously that you're being called upon right now to go to another level. You're manifesting. So that means that you've probably written a list, or consciously or unconsciously, you want more. And so when we do, we start to activate, the energy of wanting to move to the next level. And therefore the universe is like, cool, now I can send tests your way to show you where you're not fully at the next level yet in alignment with those things you're calling in. And therefore those are what we call triggers that will come up. Tests show up as either opportunities or they'll show up as triggers that come around. And so it sounds like you're being tested. And it's always wonderful when there is a theme, like they're showing up in threes or whatever, then you really know it's a test that's coming through. So what I would do in this particular situation is I would take each one of those and get to the root of the energy again. And you can use those journal prompts. And then I would take what comes up for you in those prompts through the test DI, because this is a test. And it's going to show you why you're attracting this test and how you need to pass it and overcome it, because your manifestations are wanting to connect with you.
Very exciting.
Very.
Who knew zingers could be so powerful?
I know. Totally.
Frequency of reprogramming. I've done 6 workshops and I'm having a hard time feeling fully reprogrammed and unblocked. Would it be better to keep doing the same DIs multiple days in a row or multiple times per day? It seems like it would take months to work through a workshop that way, but I really want to feel like I am fully unblocked and reprogrammed.
I don't think the objective should ever be to be fully unblocked because, as we've been learning on the explained episodes with Dr. Tara, it's a real process and many things go into it in the conscious state and the subconscious state. So taking conscious actions and reviewing, your progress and the downloads you've had, as well as doing the subconscious work. And I don't know about you, Jessica, but for myself, it's much more of an unfolding to have a new neural pathway that's positive, that's outwritten the old when it comes to low self-worth versus high self-worth. And there's a lot that goes into it. It's through expanders and out expanding the old. So I don't think the objective should ever be like, I want to have a totally clean slate. And the best way to find what you should be reprogramming is based on the triggers that are coming up in your life. So once you go through like inner child and shadow and how to manifest, it's much more about then at that point looking at, cool, I know what I'm manifesting. Now what's presenting in my life? Because those are the things I need to tackle to unblock, expand out of, and take the actionable steps, maybe passing tests, filtering through authentic code, that's going to help my manifestation come closer or connect with me. So I personally would never approach it at like, I want to unblock everything, because again, I think it takes time for those new neural pathways to create. And each time you're chiseling away based on a new trigger that's coming up in your life, you're working on those old ones as well, because most of them are connected to similar root childhood low self-worth experiences.
And even just kind of echoing what you said at the top of the episode, I'm getting the sense for this particular member that they seem to be like the good student. They've done 6 workshops. They're doing it multiple times a day, like releasing sort of some of that perfectionism on, completing everything in exactly the right way. Give yourself licensing to feel into it, to move through it as your body needs time to heal and reprogram and let things integrate.
I think that's so important because the manifestation trajectory at the fastest, again, from the top of the episode, is when all 3 of those things are in motion. So if you're that perfect student, again, that's just focused on the unblocking piece and like doing the work perfectly, you're missing out on the experience of the other 2 together that's going to actually magnetize and have space for your manifestation to come through.
Okay, clarity trigger. You've shared examples before when we're not meant to have clarity yet. As someone who likes to be decisive and take action, I'm finding it challenging to wait for clarity, but it's something I'm working on reprogramming. I've noticed in a few DIs that the moment you ask to come up with the next actionable steps, it triggers that same lack of clarity block in me again, and then the whole thing unravels. Apart from the trigger DI, how can I navigate that clarity won't come to me?
I think I'm intuiting just energetically here, the real thing that you should be focused on and unblocking and looking at is control. So I think it's way less about clarity, control, meaning like, I want to know what my future looks like, what I need now, how to do it. And that's why your subconscious inside of the DI is like, nope, because it's just a control thing. So I would actually do some heavy work on control. Where did I pick that up from? What does it mean for me? Like clarity, how does that make me feel safe and in control? That's where I would be doing my work inside of the daily reprogramming exercise.
Reprogramming a dream. Can I reprogram a dream that I've had? I've had a reoccurring dream, an ex-boyfriend that varies from me having to re-explain why we can't be friends to us being like ghosts trapped together, no longer in love. I don't miss him, and I actually am very annoyed every time this happens. It's usually 3 or 4 times in a month, and then zilch, it's gone, but then it comes back again. I found out later from a mutual friend that he went through some sort of milestone recently. How can I reprogram this?
Oh, this is such a great question, if you're wanting to use the question service with Amanda Blair, the coach, because she used to get this. When we used to work together, she was my client. She would get this with an ex all the time, and it always signified an upgrade and an up level that was happening in her life at this time, which is interesting because this person's intuiting the ex-partners. Number one, when we have things happening in our dreams, that is subconscious work. Even though it's sometimes really hard to read and decode and understand, your subconscious is doing exactly what it's needing in this type of a dream. It's doing what it's needing to feel empowered and safe and soothed and all of that stuff. So I wouldn't actually be looking at the dream itself. I'd actually really be looking at, for instance, what's coming up for you that he's reached a new milestone, like in your conscious state, what is that representing to you? And when this is happening, I would be looking at in your life how you're up leveling and how your subconscious is throwing out old folders that it doesn't need anymore through the process of neuroplasticity. Where in your subconscious does this person still represent like space and importance and what it means to have them love you? I would be looking at that. So I would be looking at what I just said, and then I would be looking at how you're feeling for his new milestones and stuff. And just knowing that your subconscious is actually doing some reprogramming for you that it's needing right now.
That's so cool. Now I'm like thinking back on any time I've ever had a dream around an ex, and I'm like, oh, what was I learning? What was I reprogramming?
And it usually has nothing to do with them per se. It's usually to do with your personal growth. Or in this case, it could be you're feeling your lack of growth because that person is growing, So it's, Amanda would be if you're like, oh, I want to dive into this deeper, I'm not understanding what Lacy's saying, sending a question to Amanda through that QA service would be really powerful.
Oh, I love that. I'm definitely going to send one over to Amanda. It's so true, because if I think of times that I've had those dreams, I feel nothing towards these exes that are long gone in the past, but it's that dynamic. It's who was I showing up as around them? How am I needing to better integrate that piece of myself now? All of those things.
Yeah. And I mean, it's an up-leveling thing or being called to up-level. So that's always cool.
Okay, last question. Integrating triggers. The way I work through triggers is to detach the emotion from myself and look at it almost like an object or appendage, and then process and integrate and reprogram. In other words, I detach from it a bit to be able to look at it objectively. But this doesn't help in moments where I have been triggered and still have to continue about my day before going into a DI. For example, being triggered in moments of high visibility like public speaking or a photo shoot. My question is, how do you quickly return to center when thrown by someone else's energy? This wouldn't be emotional bypassing, but rather emotional triage. Any tips or tricks to reconnect in whirlwind moments so the experience remains buoyant and then later be able to do the work around the trigger?
I mean, the way that I tend to tackle this, and maybe it's not totally the right way, but I'm a big one for making sure I get like most emotions and energetic blocks out of my body, and this actually, when this stuff starts to lessen is when you're starting to realize how much you've reprogrammed into a higher self-worth, because you feel a lot less shame in real time when things come up. You can brush it off a lot easier. But when that's not the case and a lot of shame's coming up in those circumstances, or anger or different feelings, I tend to kind of turn off my mind and feel everything through my heart. until I've processed it all of the way. So let's say the initial thing from public speaking is like, holy shit, I just ruined that. Oh my God, everybody thinks I'm stupid. Whatever the shadow is that's coming up or the shame, I would turn off my brain and not let it be the thing to process. And then I just start to feel everything. And I literally feel it all fully and I let it come out of my heart space. This is from that book, Letting Go.
David R. Hawkins.
Yes, Hawkins. There we go. And so, and then as you're feeling everything, you move through the layers of different feelings. First it can be shame to grief to whatever. And then you get to a place where it moves out of your body and then you can address it later in a DI and get to the root of why it bothered you so much, and usually we've experienced stuff in the past that makes us feel all of those feelings. So that's how I tend to tackle it. Who knows if that's totally the right thing, and everybody might have their own coping process.
Yeah. And I think when, let's say, hopefully this never happens to someone, but I'm sure it's possible. Like, let's say you're giving a speech somewhere and someone interrupts you and says something really nasty, and then you have to continue on giving the speech. So, you're consciously worried about the next part of the speech and you're not able to like move through all of those emotions. Try to regulate your breathing. Because I think if you can calm down, like get back into like that rest and digest state, get out of fight or flight, because that's probably what just like perked up for you, is just get back to some centered breathing. I've heard that if you exhale longer than you take an inhale, you're actually regulating your vagal nerve and nervous system and parasympathetic. And so just in the middle of that experience, just try a couple of deep breaths in and then a couple of longer deep breaths out and see if that can get you just back to neutral. And then you can take the emotion through the DI later.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I've heard that before from breathwork teachers for sure, that's so beneficial. And from Kundalini.
Yeah, because it's really all about, when you feel that sort of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person said this, or, oh, that's so painful, that hurts so much. Like it's almost like hijacking your brain at the time and hijacking your nervous system. And so get that all back online first. And then you can go back when you have more time to really feel through everything and understand what came up.
I mean, yeah. And if you're following, Joe Dispenza for health, I follow him for Mind Over Matter health stuff. His big thing is finding the elegant present moment. And then with that, getting into the heart space again, like really being able to regulate your feelings and existence at all times. But what I do love about that Hawkins method is it leaves me. Like when I really, really process through all of the feelings, it's like later then I process it through my mind, of course, but it leaves my body, it doesn't get stuck in the body as much. So yeah, I think that combined with breathing is very powerful.
It's so, so, so important to give yourself space to feel those emotions, whether it's like trapping yourself in your closet for a minute and just screaming into a pillow or punching a pillow or crying for like 30 seconds as hard as you possibly can. It does wonders to release all of that from the body. I always recommend that to everyone. They're like, that sounds crazy. I'm like, it feels fabulous.
And just so, so important to not get trapped to become something else.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for submitting questions. I hope this really enlightens some new reprogramming techniques or things to do down there. We'll see you next month. Can't wait.
Yay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
I hope you found that episode to be extremely supportive during this challenge, to take you deeper. I hope that it felt like hand-holding in some degree. If you found it supportive, feel free to share it with any like-minded friends, family, or fellow Pathway members. Every month, we like to choose a podcast review, a 5-star podcast review, where we then will gift a 1-year membership to the reviewer. So I'm going to go ahead and read off the one we chose for this month. If you hear that it's you, please contact us through our homepage. You'll write a note and just let the team know that this was you, and you will now enjoy your 1-year membership to the Pathway. So this one's fun, and I think it's expansive for exactly where a lot of people are right now. This was by Maria_JB. So Maria_JB, get in touch with our customer service team on the homepage to enjoy your 1-year membership to the Pathway. Maria says, pandemic manifestation. I've been doing this work on and on for about 4 years now. I'm feeling so called to recommit myself to the daily practice. Thank you so much to Lacy and the team for encouraging members to keep up the momentum with the updates of the Pathway membership and the Magnetism Challenge for December. I've manifested such higher self-worth, a loving relationship, countless material items, a job, a promotion, etc. through these 4 years. But the best of all, after a lifetime struggle with a female friend, I finally manifested an emotionally supportive group of female friends who I feel so aligned with in the middle of this pandemic. What? Anything is possible. Thank you so much, XOXO. And I love that and want to highlight that because I know a lot of us are feeling extremely isolated with this new surge and lockdown. And I saw it. I always love telling this about one of our teammates. She's had 3 relationships in COVID, all from dating apps, one from meeting through a friend. Literally, you can manifest anything at any time. So I just want to use that as expansion for somebody else who might be feeling that that's not possible in this moment. So thank you so much, Maria, for sharing that. And we're so excited to have you in the community. See you all next week.